And boom, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thank you so much for joining me for this very special interview of Shooting the Shit on a microphone. Well, at least, I don't have a microphone. This guy has microphones. But today, I have a very special guest with me today. I have someone that, he runs this podcast called The Veterans Minimum. Like, it's a very unique podcast because it's like a sports betting podcast. He talks about sports with all the other members of that crew as well. He has a Patreon account that has all the exclusives, so make sure you guys check that out as well. Very passionate sports fan, also a very passionate wrestling fan. He's got news articles talking about the podcast. It's amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, introducing the one and only Nick Dais. How are you, my friend?
Man, quite the intro. Sock Monkey Mike. I always pop for that name. I appreciate it. I appreciate the love and support from you. Always just going out your way to create extra posts. And, I don't take that for granted. That's why when you hit me up, I was just like, yeah, of course, no doubt. So I'm always humbled by people wanting to talk to me.
Yeah, man. Especially, and what I love about your content too is that the passion that you have for talking about sports and talking about, whether it's wrestling, football, why Andrew Luck is one of the best picks in the fantasy draft, or it's just depending on the situation. I think the way that you display what's going on in the sports world and how it's kind of connected to nowadays culture is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I got a valuable lesson early on. So I've been doing Veterans Minimum for 5 years now. I just had the anniversary. I guess I don't know the exact date, but I know the first episode I ever did back with my buddies a couple of years ago was the NFL preview show where we kind of just sit back, shoot the shit about all the teams. Mm-hmm. So that's like the official anniversary of the show. And early on, people gravitated to, I guess what you said, like my passion, my knowledge. I like to say that I know a little bit about a lot, right? So I don't spread myself too thin. I'm very simple. I have like 5 or 6 interests, and I like talking about them. Wrestling, gambling, sports. I'm fascinated by like the Colombian cartel and Pablo Escobar. It's very weird. I get it. And that's really it, man. I'm very simple, and it's the lesson that I got early on to kind of piggyback off what you said about it being unique. I think that's when people ask me to describe my show, I'm like, it's a little bit taking bits and pieces from all the people that I like listening to and crafting it into my own like snowball, right? So, it's a little bit of the Joe Rogan of talking with anyone about anything to like, if you really want to get your stats, you could come there too. If you want something super casual, like a sports for dummies look, you get that as well. So that lesson early on was that at the time, it was about 600,000 podcasts on Apple. Mm-hmm. I remember, man, I feel like I've been in the game for so long that, back then, dude, 2015, podcasts are like, if you listen to podcasts, you were kind of looked at weirdly. How long have you been listening to podcasts, if you don't mind me asking?
Honestly, I feel kind of a disrespect towards the podcasting game. I've only been listening for about a year or two. Mm-hmm. So it really hasn't been anything since birth. No,
right.
It's been fairly recently. I mean, when I look at your show as well, I kind of, I kind of see the bits and pieces from other shows as well, but you put your own twist to it. That's what's something special about it, is that you put your own, you put your own passion towards it. There's stuff like Undisputed that you see on television. You see stuff like, ESPN Game Day. There's so many. There's a million plus. Even Lock It In, which that reminds me a lot of your show as well, with Rachel Bonnetta, Clay Travis. Oh my goodness.
Todd Furman. Yeah, I know those.
Yeah, Todd Furman. Yeah, there's so many shows out there, but with your show in particular, you display your knowledge, but you make it as a normal conversation. I think that's something that's very, very kind of hard to display nowadays, especially when you're kind of going through script or it's kind of just shooting the shit like you always do.
Yeah, there's I don't know if this is going to sour people, but there's no script. There's never any script. Right. I do a lot of research beforehand, without a doubt. When I do have my phone and people look at me glancing at my phone, it's more so because I need to time out the cameras because my cameras, I record them on an iPhone. So I don't want to. Yeah, I mean, dude, nowadays, like I was watching the not the Grammys. What is it? The Oscars a couple years ago, and like a documentary won an Oscar, and it was all shot from like an iPhone 9 or 10. Wow. So I'm like, all right, these cameras are out of control, and it's basically just the lighting, right? If your lighting is good, it can make any camera shot look legit. So when I'm looking at my phone, dude, it's more so not because like I'm worried about the time or like the segment overlapping or whatever. It's more like the file takes longer to transfer when it's more than like 25 minutes.
Right.
So but besides that, dude, like it's the wrestling fan in me of the storytelling, right? I love storytelling. I think everyone has a story. I think everyone brings something to the table. I find a lot of things interesting. I'm just like, I get it from my pops where my dad is a very curious individual. Like he'll be like, "Oh, where's your shirt from? What kind of material is it?" He'll ask you like 20 questions within 3 minutes. So that's where I get that from. So with my show, it's very laid back. It's, you know, a lot of times I'll give my guests bullet points. We don't touch on them. It's more so to get them eased into it. But, you know, I talk to anyone that I find interesting. And if you could bring something to the table, I'll press record.
Yeah, and that's absolutely amazing. You talk about the bullet points too. I do want to touch on, before we get into the background of Veterans Minimum and kind of like your career of being a podcaster, talking about your love and passion for sports, I wanted to touch on one subject that I saw fairly recently on an episode of Veterans Minimum, and that was the if I remember correctly, it was the kind of the stock in terms of the fantasy football league, in terms of Andrew Luck of being one of the top quarterbacks in football. So can you talk about, I believe if I remember correctly, you were talking to one of the co-hosts as well, as saying like, man, he's not even in your top ranked. Like it's like, how did you feel in that conversation?
Well, so he's retired. Right. So I was a big Andrew Luck guy from before I even knew what a podcast was. He just had the it factor that everyone always coins. And I'm a fan of guys in college, whether it's basketball or football. If you come from a smaller program, like not your Michigans and your Ohio States and Alabamas, like there's something, and especially with the quarterback position, that makes it very unique. If you look at the NFL right now, and off the top, you just list some of the colleges that these guys came from, there's not a lot of traditional powers, right? Alabama all these years have been, I mean, people have had debates if they could beat like the worst football team in the NFL, which is one of the most like ludicrous arguments you can make. Like no college team is ever going to beat a pro team, but I don't want to get into that rant. But what I'm saying is, up until this season, Mike, this is the first time that Alabama actually had a quarterback in Tua. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, so we'll just keep it at Tua. Having him come into the league and you're like, yo, that dude right there, he's a stallion. He's going to be the guy, right? So Andrew Luck came from Stanford. For those that might not know, Stanford is a very, very intriguing football program. They're not like other schools where, oh, you know what, Mike? Yeah, your grades suck, dude, but you're a hell of a running back. Come on in. Nah, man. For you to play at Notre Dame, for you to play at Stanford, you need to be a high-level education 3.8 GPA guy to get in, right? So he was carrying those teams back then without a lot of NFL talent around them. And then, you know, last year, about 2 weeks before the regular season started, he kind of broke social media where he announced his retirement. Right. And literally, dude, I felt like a celebrity. Everybody that knows me hit me up like, yo, your boy is retiring. What's up? And I put out an emergency podcast where like I almost cried because I love this dude. And like the Colts also, they finally had built a roster for him. And, you know, I start doing my NFL projections and predictions from like Memorial Day weekend. Right. And I had to go back, dude, within like 10 days and adjust everything. You know, I had them winning the Super Bowl. I had him MVP. So it's like I got to go back and forth. So the conversation in the clip that you saw was me asking my buddy Alan, shouts to my guy Alan, my co-host on Veterans Minimum.
Mhm.
I was just like, dude, if Andrew Luck was to come back, where would he be on your list? And he's like, I don't even think about Andrew Luck. And I was just like, oh,
Yeah, it just hurts.
it's still real to me, damn it.
Yeah,
You
man.
know? So yeah, that's an Andrew Luck thing, man, that you were talking about. I just wanted to, just to give people a little behind the scenes and
Yeah.
backstory as to that,
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, what a beautiful story, especially with Andrew Luck. And speaking about, when you talk about sports and it's talk about kind of the topics that hit major news. I mean, obviously, we saw with the protests that were going on in the NBA, whether that was through the Milwaukee Bucks or they had canceled the who was it? It was, I believe it was the Utah Jazz that had practice on the court of the away team, and then the home team never showed up. So it was kind of those moments, especially within recent time, that you present in a more unique fashion. So can you talk about whenever you're thrown a news topic, whether that's basketball, baseball, football, or any of those types of major sports news stories? Do you approach them a different way than just something that happened within the past week that's compared to something that just happened just yesterday, or no?
If there's ever breaking news, I'm probably the worst source when it comes to that, because I don't like talking out of my ass, dude. I think a lot of times a big mistake that happens in our society, and you kind of saw it happen with Kobe, right? Kobe died back in January, and people just wanted to get the story out. People want to be first rather than being correct.
Right.
And, I see it on a way lesser of a sadness level, right? Like that's the ultimate down, is someone passing away. But, a player gets hurt, Mike, and they're like, oh, what do you think of this? What does it? It's like, dude, hold on. Let me gather the information. A trade happens and everyone is saying, oh, who won the trade? Who won the trade? It's like, dude, hold on. Let me look at the numbers. Let me look at the cap. Let me look at the fit and whatnot. And then I give a response maybe a day after. So I do drop the ball as far as capitalizing on the trend or going after the clout of the conversation going on. I'm going to give you an honest and I wouldn't say factual, but a well-researched answer than me just talking out of my ass. Because I was doing that in the beginning, and it's just not my thing, man. I'm always very well calculated with everything I do. I never say yes to an offer right off the bat. Like if you were to hit me up and be like, yo, Nick, I got this job for you. It's, you give me some details. Like, I'm not going to be like, all right, I'm in. Like I'll check back to you within a week. Like that's just always been my thing, So yeah, man, as far as that with the news thing, I kind of just wait and see approach. But I'm also like, I'm not afraid to speak on anything. You know what I mean? Because I just know who I am. And born and raised in Queens, I kind of just like I've had 2 black roommates when I was in college, right? And I learned a lot from them. I was in a relationship with a black girl for a couple months, and I learned a lot. There was a clip that really resonated with me, dude. And I'm sure you've seen this because I know you're a mark like I am. Cody Rhodes, I believe it was after. Was it that first pay-per-view they did, All In?
Yes. That was under the umbrella of Ring of Honor, but their first actual pay-per-view was
like the one that was in Chicago around this time last year.
That was All Out last year. The year before that was All In.
Oh my God, it's been 2 years. What the hell? Oh man. Bro. Yeah, dude. But I want to say, oh man, this year's been such a drag.
I know.
I think it was Mark Henry asked him about how he saw a lot of color on the card. And he was talking about his relationship with his wife, Brandy Rhodes. And there was something that he said that resonated with me because I heard the exact same thing. Like I'm 19 years old and I'm going out on a date. And I told the girl, I was like, she was like, oh, how do you feel about dating a African-American girl? And I was like, I don't see color. Like I thought that was like the cool response. Mind you, I'm 19 years old, everybody. I'm 19. I was an idiot. But then she kind of like schooled me, dude. Like she pulled me aside and was telling me like, sure, you don't see it, but this is how it is. And between that and, going to a high school that was, I wouldn't say predominantly black, but it was Queens is the most diverse city in the country. From many like rankings and articles. So to me, Mike, it was never like I never saw it that way. So these conversations hit me close to home. You know, the best man at my wedding is going to be black. The godfather to a future little lamb running around is gonna be an African American individual. So you shouldn't be afraid to say something on how you feel.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's how I've always been.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's absolutely beautiful, man. I mean, I've watched the same interview, and I've gotten friends as well, and did throughout the years as well, just kind of meeting people and watching different experiences, kind of learning about those different experiences, and it truly makes you think a lot more.
Yeah. Look, I think you should always be open to learning. Like I'm still constantly learning. You know, anything I don't understand how to do, whether it's editing or whether it's anything. Like shit, you put me onto some app. You know, we'll keep it between us two, so we don't let the goodies be exposed to the world. But when I see something that I'm interested in, I'll look it up. I'll ask questions. I think one of the worst things that people do is they have a lot of pride in admitting that they're wrong or they don't know anything. And I think asking for help or just being an ear, you can dominate. I kind of threw this quote together one time, and my friend tells me how much he loves it and he uses it in his like public speaking ventures. It's like you can dominate a conversation by being silent. And what I mean by that is just listening.
Right.
So,
yeah, I mean that's a beautiful quote, my friend, and that's definitely a key thing to that. But speaking about, you know, transitioning from a little topic to another, I do want to talk about, you know, your passion, like I mentioned before earlier on. You did mention about your father and kind of that same style that you two have when it comes to like, oh, I want to learn more about this, I want to know more about that. So can you talk about what kind of inspired you, you know, in particular, to become a fan of sports or become a fan of wrestling?
So, I mean, sports, I grew up with it, right? My dad played until he was 20 years old professionally in Greece. If you saw him now, definitely doesn't pass like an athlete. But I just grew up with my mom played basketball also. She would joke around and tell me how if there was a WNBA back in the day, in like the 80s, I hope she don't come downstairs and kick my ass or say, you know, kind of dating her a bit, but how like she had a legitimate chance to like go play Division I basketball too. So like sports was kind of always my thing. My group of friends, my childhood friends, we all would go and link up at the park. We just, you know, no cell phones, no internet. Right? Like we're like my generation, you know, I'm 29 years old. My generation was like at the beginning of social media and just the internet, I should say, not even social media, at the growing pains of the internet, but also like we were from the generation where, yo, it's dope to go outside. So like we just knew that every day after school, 5 o'clock, well, someone's going to be at the park. Right. So like sports is always my thing. I played every sport growing up, and soccer was my first love through my father. And it was a way for us to connect. And at a young age, I kind of became very intrigued by betting. And it always gave me an edge because betting kind of paints a different picture when it comes to sports. It's a unique perspective. Mm-hmm. It's one where it eliminates a lot of bias. And you could be a very, very smart sports fan if you can understand some of the nuances. You don't need to get too advanced with it. Right. But just understanding why is this team favored over this team and things like that can go a long way. So that's where like that started for me. And wrestling, dude, like I grew up in the Attitude Era. I have off to my right a Stone Cold Steve Austin vest, which is
that's right.
probably in the Mount Rushmore of prized possessions I have. You know, if my house ever is burning, that's one of the few things I'm grabbing and getting my ass out of here. You know, so wrestling has always been my thing. I love it. I just think everyone has something they're into, dude, and it's like I love wrestling, and I had stopped watching during the I think 2008 to 2011.
Yeah.
And then I got pulled. I would always have it on in the background.
Yeah,
Like
so
Monday
no one's
Night.
got the same interest.
Yeah, and then the pipe bomb just brought me back in. You know, Stone Cold's my favorite wrestler ever. CM Punk is number 2. He's wearing Stone Cold's shirt. Immediately, just like connected with me. So, and then ever since then, you know, I was doing a wrestling show for a little bit called The Jerks with 2 of my buddies. And then just over time, I kind of just like went all in on Veterans Minimum, and I took over the brand from some of my other friends who just like didn't want to do it anymore, just because, you know, like one got married, the other one just didn't want to commit to it. The other one had like his own brand he was worried about. The other one got promoted. It's like there's no animosity or hostility. It's just like sometimes the simplest answer is life just gets in the way, bro. So that's really like how that entire situation came apart. And then I kind of just like went all in on Veterans Minimum because gave me a bigger audience and more broad range of topics to chat about.
Yeah, and like I mentioned before with Veterans Minimum, you really created this, like to me, it's not just a podcast, it's a discussion. It's a discussion between, you know, individuals who are, you know what they're talking about, have the research, have the bullet points. But not only that, you know, you reach out to your audience as if they could be a part of the conversation, even if they're not in the studio. They're not, you know, on call with you on Skype or Zoom or anything like that. So to me, it feels like that Veterans Minimum has given an opening key, as they say, to just a whole variety of new discussions.
Man, I'm stealing a lot of what you're saying because I love how you're describing the show, and it's no, seriously, dude. I think it's you ever heard the elephant analogy? How sometimes you're so close to the front of the elephant where you can't see just how big the elephant is.
Right.
And you know, I'm a big fan of this guy Andrew Schultz. He's a comedian out of New York, and within the last like 18 months, his stuff has skyrocketed, right? But if you dig deep into the story, I believe he's 36, 37 years old. I knew him from Guy Code MTV way back in the day. And I have some friends that know him. And like he did the whole comedy scene in New York City. Like you might see him, and I'm just using you as an example. You might see him and be like, oh, where'd this guy come from? But it's like, nah, man, there's growing pains. There's a lot of crickets in the audience. There's a lot of videos that, you know, 10 people saw, you know? So like, I love what you're saying because he said something about how he made his special, instead of putting out a hour-long special, he made it where, like, you know, I cut it up into 7-8 minute clips because his friends, I should say, that were fans of comedy were like, specials are too long. And he was just like, oh, okay. So going back to what you mentioned about my show, that's it. You have to be different to stand out, right?
Oh yeah.
You just have to. And I like to like I said, it's just so many different things are covered, and the personality is what prevails, but also it garners to so many different audiences, right? Like the Pro Football Focus nerds, they can come, and I don't mean to offend nobody with the nerds thing because I'm a PFF nerd also, you know what I mean? So like I was talking to myself here, but like the people that are into advanced analytics, you could get something out of that, right? You want to know players rushing yards per game. You'll get that there too. But also if you're just like, yo, I want to kill an hour and just laugh and just shoot the shit and have just like bar talk, you're going to get that too. So again, at its core, it's storytelling, it's informative, and it's just shooting the shit.
Yeah, just like the title of this interview. So you know that's what's beautiful, man, is that if you could tell a story in your own unique fashion, that's why for me as an aspiring sports broadcaster, I look up to people like Vince Scully, for example. Such a unique and legendary storyteller who literally sounded like he was in your living room just across the street telling you, hey, so the Brooklyn Dodgers are facing off against the Philadelphia or someone like that. And did you know that Clayton Kershaw was, had a perfect game last game and then did this in college and did all that? Like that's awesome.
Yeah, it's all about it. I think the biggest thing, so like when people ask me about starting a podcast, I kind of tell them the truth, and the truth hurts. Like if I know someone's work ethic and their dedication and desire, I'll be like, man, this might not be for you, bro. And at first, like I pride myself on everyone knows where they're at with me. I don't want to say I call it how I see it because I think that's a really dumb quote. It's just like, no, sometimes you're an idiot, right? But I just think like you're always going to get an honest answer from me. So I make people like think about it like, yo, you sure you want me to tell you? Before I tell you, like, are you sure? Because it's hard. It's dedication. You know, I've been putting out 2 episodes a week for 4 years now, sometimes 3. At one point when I was doing Degeneration Bets, my sports betting show, and The Jerks and VM, I'm putting out 6 episodes a week on top of streaming, on top of editing. So like I work harder on my craft now and my brand than I do my 9-to-5 job ever. Right. And like, I'm not getting paid. Luckily, thank God, between the Patreon and, you know, shout out to Blue Wire, who they compensate me, and sponsors are starting to come in. Now I'm seeing some of those rewards. But, you know, a lot of people want the fruits of the labor without putting in the labor. And I think it's very important that, like, yo, you got to be consistent. You got to be dedicated, and you need to be personable. Right. Like, people like my stories. Like, when I go to Vegas, it's like, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. Like, I've had nights where I've lost a couple $1,000s because the tables are not going my way, right? I try to protect people from saying, you know, don't play roulette. It's the dumbest game to gamble on. Don't buy people's picks. Don't buy people's betting picks because they're going to sell you on, oh, I pick 80% against the spread. It's like, that's very, very hard, right? Like, professional sports bettors, for you and your audience, if you guys don't know, they aspire for 55%. I don't know what it's like where you're from, but 55 in high school is failing. Yeah. So, like, you know, you're talking about like a 65 in the public schools in New York City is passing. Wow. If you were to tell me I could pick 65%, Mike, this year, you can guarantee me I'm picking 65% against the spread in the NFL this year. I'm asking everybody I know for money, and I'm investing it in the sports betting market. Because it's a very, very hard thing. But with proper research, you can gain a little bit of an edge, but it's not a significant one. So it's a very difficult profession, and it's a very difficult thing to be good at. Right.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, sports betting is truly an art of its own. I mean, when I look at all these, you know, sports betting shows, and of course, when I look at the Veterans Minimum podcast, it's so unique just hearing about the numbers, the statistics, knowing that the Lakers have a 60% chance of making it to the to the NBA Finals, or whatever the case may be. It's just awesome hearing about the numbers and having those statistics and being put into regular conversation. That's something that's really a true gift in the podcasting world.
Yeah, and there's a common term that's always thrown around by sports bettors or people that want to. It's like one of those buzzwords that is supposed to make you sound smarter than you really are. And in sports betting, it's the term value, right? Like, oh, there's some value on this player or on that team, and it's like, yo, dog, do you really know what value is? Like, you probably have no idea, right? But it's just one of those situations. So, like, the example I want to give you is the Portland Trailblazers, right? Mm-hmm. I bet them when they were a game and a half out of the 8th seed. This is before the playing game. They were 80-1 odds to win the championship. I felt like that was good value because if they were to make the playoffs at the start of the playoffs, they'd be closer to 25-30-1. So $1 wins you $80 before the playoffs. $1 wins you $25-30 at the start of the playoffs. So what I was saying was they're the hot team right now. It's the bubble. It's been a wacky 2020. Anything can happen. It's good value for them to win the NBA Finals. It's completely different from you saying, yo, man, we just got abducted by aliens, and you got to pick a team to win the Finals. Who you picking? I'm not going to pick the Blazers, right? But I'm going to bet on the Blazers. I think that's a common misconception that a lot of people have. And that's where, like, betting is very unique because it's a completely different perspective from one and the other.
Yeah, and that's, like I mentioned before, there's so many different perspectives. I don't know why my computer just did that. But regardless, it's been awesome getting a conversation with you, Nick. But before we go, I do have one final question for you, and that is the name Nick Lamb. I do want to ask, what was the thought process behind that famous podcasting name? You know, of course, you use it on the Patreon, which you guys could support. Link will be down in the description below. And, you know, he does giveaways as well. He also did recently a Madden 21 giveaway, which was, I can't believe I didn't win. I'm just kidding. But, regardless, he does great stuff like that. But going back to the question, Nick Lamb, where did that come from? And did you think it was going to catch on?
Catch on, I guess that's for the audience to decide if it's caught on. So a little backstory, like I mentioned before, I'm Greek. In Greek Easter, we eat lamb. When I was younger, I took a picture next to a lamb, and two of my buddies just found it really funny. Don't know why. Never asked questions, and like everyone just started calling me Lamb, to the point where like my parents call me that too, weirdly enough, and my grandma. So it's kind of taken its own life there. And also, I have a friend group to this day where there's 3 Nick Dais in our friend group. One is Boss, one is Little Nick. I used to be Big Nick because I was older than him by a full year when we were like 13, 14 years old. And now I'm Lamb. And the Lamb Show is kind of the username for everything, because I was going to be a police officer. Oh, okay. So I couldn't use my government name so I could be on the internet. And then I kind of just bet on myself. I went through a lot to become a cop. Didn't want to do it the whole time, but I mean, I've talked about this ad nauseum. I had to, I got disqualified for a driving ticket. I had to pay lawyer fees in order to get the decision overturned. And the whole time I'm just like, I don't even want to do this shit, because they gave me an ultimatum. Like, yo, you're going to have to either, you're going to be 18 months off the internet. That's like their protocol. You can't use your name. So that's why, like, I had the Lamb Show. I've had a bunch of different usernames. But because it's hard, dude, like, this, man, it's hard to grow on social media, and it's hard to just like disappear for 2 days. If you don't post for 2 days, you're off the algorithm. Like, shit is all wacky. Yeah. Imagine now for 18 months. It's like, yo, my career, whatever little career momentum I had, it's completely derailed there. So I kind of just like, yo, it's learning experiences. But now I'm at a place where, like, I know what, who, and why I'm doing everything. And it's a relief, man. It's a relief. So how old are you, dude, if you don't mind me asking?
Man, I am a 21-year-old piece of gold, my fam.
21-year-old piece of gold. I love it. That voice is tremendous, by the way. I've told you this before.
Thank you.
Very professional. But, dude, it's I wasn't, I'm a little envious of people like you, man, to be honest, where you kind of know what you want to do at such a young age. I think I don't know if I could drop 4-letter words, but that's awesome. That's
you're in the shit, bro.
Yeah. That's really cool, man. I think it's a big luxury. One of my buddies, Mike, I recently met him through a mutual friend, and we become really tight. He's a vet, and I asked him recently, I'm like, yo, did you always want to be a vet? And he's like, yeah, since I was like born. I was like, yo, that's so cool. Like, I find that so cool because, like, dude, I wanted to be just like every other kid, right? I wanted to be a professional athlete. And then from there, I wanted to be a gym teacher. Then I wanted to be an accountant. Then I wanted to do this. I wanted to be in the FBI. I wanted to but at its core, I always was a sports fan. So I kind of now I have a nice chance of kind of making a longer career talking about the things I'm interested in than I ever could have imagined. No journalism degree, no communications degree, no broadcasting. I just got a shirt done, dude, and I know I'm kind of going on a rant. It says nobody on the front because I was in talks with a big network, very big network. I'll leave it at that. And the lady was just like, she didn't mean it in a bad way. I got what she meant. And I'm just being extra with it because I like, I'm just like the Young Bucks, dude, right? The Young Bucks, all the old school wrestling heads were like, you guys can't super kick 20 times a match. So what did they do? They super kick 40 times a match. I'm the same exact way, dude. Right. When I post workout videos and my friends are like, oh, why you got to post workout videos? You know what I do, Mike? I tag them in those videos now. That's like my thing. Like my fantasy football league, I've won it back-to-back years. I'm the reigning, defending, undisputed GOAT of my fantasy league. I let them know every chance I get that that's the case.
Nice.
So going back to everything that I was mentioning, the lady was just like, you've kind of built this thing and it's really successful, and you popped up in our system and all this, and we love your work, and you're a nobody. Like, you're not credentialed. You're not like a cast off from a different network. You're not a part of, an organization, and you were a beat writer. Like, you kind of built your own lane. And like I said, I'm being extra with it, getting the shirt done. But it's just another, like, it's more fuel to the fire. And I love it. I wasn't offended by it at all. Because she's right, too. And what she meant by that is, like, I'm not from a former employee of Fox or ESPN. And then, like, I ventured off and did my own thing. It's like, nah, I kind of started to scratch with some friends. And shouts to my buddy Joe Santagato, who I'm friends with. He kind of came to us with an opportunity early on to do the show together. And then it just kind of, like, over time, you kind of saw that, everyone has all these different interests, and nothing bad happens to people that hustle. And if all the cliches, bro, it's true. Just keep going, and you never know what can happen. So I got that shirt done. It says "Nobody" across the front, and I wear it with pride.
Absolutely, my friend. Well, once again, Nick, I do want to thank you for being a part of this interview. For those who don't know, he does have a little podcast called The Veterans Minimum. Make sure you guys subscribe to that. Link will be down in the description below, where you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, basically anywhere where you can find podcasting systems. And of course, how can I not forget the Patreon? Make sure you guys support the Patreon as well. You could be in the most exclusive club ever. All you do is just donate to the Patreon. Link will be down in the description as well below. And before I forget, make sure you guys follow Nick the Lamb Show. I'm pointing the wrong way. The Lamb Show on Instagram and Twitter. Link will be down in the description below. But once again, all promotions aside, thank you so much, Nick. I appreciate the passion. I feed off of it. It's one of the reasons why I continue what I want to do. So I really do appreciate you being an inspiration from the bottom of my heart. So I want to thank you.
Oh, dude, you just made my voice crack too on the airwaves. I love it. I love it. Leave it. Don't even edit that out. What you see is what you get. But it means a lot, man. It means a lot. I find it crazy that you feel that way about me. I feel honored and humbled as well. And it's a little bit of PEDs along the way to make me keep going. That anyone would be inspired by me. So I appreciate it, dude.
I appreciate my too, my friend. Well, until we meet again, guys, thank you guys so much. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe. I hate doing that, but I have to do that for the views. And of course, I will see you guys in the next interview. Boom. And